Hello, everyone. I am Yolanda with Harper Therapy. I am laughing. It is Halloween. Happy Halloween, everyone. And Toby and Hobbs are dressed in their Halloween ties today. And Hobbs is not a fan of his Halloween tie. They're not in full costume today, although they would make a great Beanie Baby, just like with a tie heart on them. But Hobbs has his Halloween tie on. Of course, it's hanging. And he's been walking around and like getting caught up and tripped on it. And now, and then so that makes him grab the tie in his mouth and just hold on to it. So I have to laugh. It's not his favorite thing, I don't think. I wanted to share a little bit of a story with you. And I am all about metaphors and stories and how they relate to our everyday lives. And so something happened over the weekend that I thought, oh my gosh, this is like our relationships and marriages. So I was introduced to the paddleboard a year ago, just over a year ago, last summer. And I kind of observed the paddleboard from afar. As I observed the paddleboard, my thoughts were, wow, that looks really cool. That looks like it would be a lot of fun. I wonder if that would be as amazing as I think it would be. But I didn't try the paddleboard out to begin with. I kind of, like I said, observed. I don't tend to have a lot of hobbies. And then part of it too was like, what if I fall off? So I tend to not dive into things that I don't already know that I'm good at. So I just kind of observed the paddleboard from afar until this past spring. I finally got on the paddleboard, and it was amazing. And it was everything that I had hoped and dreamed the paddleboard to be. It was completely zen. It was being outside, which is important for me. It's moving my body. It's being in nature, all of those good things. And so I was like, this is amazing. And my relationship with the paddleboard kind of took off from there, to the point where Shaman and I have taken up paddleboarding as a hobby. We have some inflatable paddleboards that we will take out onto the water. And it's just been this great experience. I finally have a hobby. And it's something that I love doing, and we try to do it as often as we can. So given that, it's been a little while since I've been on the paddleboard, and we were going to take the boards out this weekend. And I was so excited since it had been so long, and it's cooler weather, and I was like, this is going to be perfect. So we get out to where we're going to put the boards in the water. And it wasn't a wonderful experience. It was the opposite of that, my experience with the paddleboard this weekend. And we get to where we're going. All of a sudden, it's overcast. It's really windy. We realize that we don't have the bigger fins that attach to the back of our boards. The water's a little choppy. And so we decided to just put the paddleboards in the water, and just see how it goes, right? And it was horrible. It was just, we were fighting against the wind, a paddle that usually, a trip that usually takes us about 15, 20 minutes to get from where we were going, where we set in to where we were going, took 45 minutes. We didn't even reach where we were going. We decided to just follow the current and go to this little island off to the side, and then reassess as it's windy and kind of raining. There's this bird that kept landing in the water next to me and ducking under and then popping his head up, almost as if he was mocking me. In my initial, we were on the water, and I'm like, this sucks. Whose idea was this anyway? And it really made me think about how in our relationships we kind of tend to do have similar experiences where before we connect with our partner, we maybe observe them from afar. We hope they're as wonderful as we think that they might be. And in the beginning, everything is great. Everything is wonderful. The little bumps in the road, we kind of navigate over, not too with not too much of an effort. Those little things that might be annoyances or whatever with the paddleboard. Sometimes it's hard to get it into the water. Sometimes the paddle itself kind of slides around, right? I can overlook those things because I love the paddleboard so much. And then the thing that we love really disappoints us, really lets us down. And so then what do we do? Because that can really have the tendency to completely unravel our experience with our partners, our experience with this thing that we love. So tip number one in working through disappointment with something that we love is to give yourself some space to work through. Like, disappointment is a pretty intense emotion. And when we navigate through intense emotions, we tend to become really reactive, and we don't operate from our best selves. So giving ourselves some space. So as we were in the water, I kind of was like, okay, I was checking in with the story that I was telling myself. And that story that I was telling myself at that moment was, this sucks. Whose idea was this? I should have known that this was going to be a horrible hobby. Why did I even get this board? What a waste of money. What a waste of time. Why are we even here? Right? And similarly, in our relationships, we can find ourselves thinking really inaccurate and untrue thoughts. Like, I know if I'm in a mindset of frustration, if I'm working from an emotion of frustration and disappointment and hurt, a lot of times what that cognition or the story that I'm telling myself is, what do I need him for anyway? Right? And that's totally inaccurate. Like, there's so many reasons that I need Shaman in my life, and so many ways that we are really good for each other. So it's checking in with that story that we're telling ourselves. Also, part of it is recognizing the part that we played. So in our relationships, if we think of like the whole pie as 100%, in every relationship, our portion of responsibility, even if it's 2%, we have to own that 2%, right? So when I was on the water this weekend, it wasn't the paddleboard's fault that the weather had gotten little crappy. It wasn't the paddleboard's fault that we had left the fins at home, the big fin at home. It wasn't the paddleboard's fault that this bird was mocking me, right? So I needed to accept some responsibility for not double checking to make sure that the fin was in our bag, for deciding to go ahead and go out into the water, for not turning back sooner, all those kinds of things. I needed to look at the role that I played in this situation and accept responsibility. Another step is to intentionally, actively recall the good times, the good experiences. And that is super tough because when you're in the messy middle of relationships, and when you're in intense emotion of disappointment and sadness and frustration, like, that's what we know, and that's what our truth is, and that's what we're holding on to. So as I was on that board, and like I said, it took us 45 minutes to get to this deserted island. We sat there, we had some lunch, we rested for a little while. Then it took an hour and 45 minutes to paddle back to where our car was. An hour and 45 minutes. That was a long time for me to be on that board with myself and with my thoughts and with my disappointment. And as I was in the middle of that, I had to remind myself of all of the good experiences that I had had on my paddleboard. I had to say, hey, remember that time that we were in this exact same place and there were dolphins swimming around? Hey, remember that time where we were paddleboarding on Weeki Wachee and there were manatees? And that's such the same thing in our relationships. It's choosing to actively recall those good experiences, which for the most part greatly outweigh the negative experiences that we have, right? And when we do that, that creates a little bit of space and a little bit of a shift so that I am not reactive and like blaming and accusing, because that's not helpful in our relationships at all, right? Because that it spins the cycle of defensiveness and criticism and all of those four horsemen that we've talked about. So creating some space to work through your disappointment, checking in with the story that you're telling yourself, doing that in a mindful way, reminding yourself like this moment is really tough, but this moment is not representative of the whole relationship with this thing that I love. It's this moment in time. Realizing the part that we played in the situation that we're going through, actively recalling those good times that we've had. And then the last tip is just to make a plan going forward. So after this experience that Shaman and I had this weekend with the paddle boards, you better believe that we are going to be very much more intentional and mindful about the weather. We talked through a plan of making sure that we have our fins packed and ready to go so that we don't leave those behind. We had the smaller fins on our board, so we did have fins, but it certainly made it harder to steer the board. So checking the weather, having an alternate plan in place for if we show up somewhere and the weather's not cooperating, all of those kinds of things. Hey, babe. Wish that you were here helping to share our story about the paddle boards this weekend. Shaman is on with us right now, just sharing about how to navigate through disappointment with something that you love. So love the paddle board, was a little bit disappointed with my experience with my board this weekend. So talking through steps of working through that and having a plan. I can't wait for you. I'm almost done. You'll have to share your experience with us next time when we're together. Shaman said to wait for him. So we will get his perspective on the paddleboard story at a later date. So just wanted to share those tips with you. Guys, it's not uncommon. Like, relationships are two humans like trying to work through hard things together. And there's going to be disappointment in our relationships. That's just part of it. If we expect there to never be any moments of challenge or disappointment, then we're just setting ourselves up for a big fall. So it's okay if those moments come. Go ahead and think through what your practice will be when it does happen. Recognize that there's some steps that you can take when you're in disappointment to reconnect with the relationship and make the relationship even better and improve it because you've gone through this hard thing together, right? So happy Halloween. Hope that you guys are having a great Wednesday, and we will talk to you soon.